I quite often talk to younger people, younger activists, about what it was like in the 70s and 80s, because it was very different. The gay village wasn't a particularly safe place to be. People were queer bashed quite often. Very few people in the city were open about their sexuality. In the early to mid-80s, things were beginning to improve, particularly for gay men, but actually the AIDS crisis changed all that. It reinforced the fear that, gay men were dangerous, that we were a risk to other people. And I think for gay men who were beginning to come out and be more public, many people, I think, went back into the closet, even if they weren't HIV positive, because there was such a backlash against the gay community. The Campaign for Homosexual Equality in Manchester organised a weekly gay disco upstairs at the Thompson's Arms. And there's a photograph of me and a number of my friends dancing away the night on a Wednesday, probably in the early 1980s. My friend Martin here, he was the only one who was positive at the time, and he died in the early 1990s. And my friend Piers here was diagnosed a bit later, and again he died when he was 40, just as AZT was coming in, but unfortunately it was too late to benefit from that. In 1984, I organised the first public meeting in Manchester around HIV and AIDS, and we had a guy called Tony Whitehead who just got involved in the Terence Higgins Trust, which was an AIDS organisation based in London, named after Terence Higgins, who was one of the first gay men to die of AIDS, and he just got involved in the trust and came up to Manchester and gave a very prophetic talk about how AIDS was going to have a huge impact on all of us, particularly on the gay community, and that it was something that we needed to be much more organised around and informed about. It was a key meeting to begin the campaign against HIV and AIDS, and following that meeting, a small group of us decided to set up Manchester AIDS Line as a telephone helpline for people worried about or affected by HIV and AIDS. Can I remember the meeting? I think the speakers spoke from a platform there, and the audience were here, and I was chairing the meeting. I was introducing the speakers, and I also spoke about what the Gay Centre had been doing. So I think we were sitting here, and then the room was just full of chairs. There were probably about 60 or 70 people. It was quite a big meeting. It was quite a serious meeting, I think, particularly when Tony Whitehead spoke very powerfully. I think people, probably for the first time in Manchester, began to think that HIV might impact them more personally. Up till then, it was something happening in San Francisco, in New York. It was something very far away. And I think people didn't really think it would ever come to Manchester. I think people thought at the time that it was something in America, that it wasn't actually going to happen and affect them personally. It's quite strange being back here, because I say it's 33 years ago. It's a long time ago. And it was quite an important meeting at the time. I think maybe people have forgotten about it who weren't there, but it was quite a significant meeting. And I think it was very much the catalyst to set up Manchester AIDS Line.
I was the founding chair of Healthy Gay Manchester as we turned it from a thing called MESMAC. And at the same time as that, I was working as an HIV social worker. So a gay man wanting to do something to stop people getting ill and supporting other gay men in the community.
In the early 90s, when nothing really was certain, we had to find another way of connecting with people. And you had a bunch of men here on Canal Street who had come out here to have fun, party, socialise. They didn't want us to talk to them about fucking and stopping fucking. Actually, it was the last thing on their mind. Probably most of them were interested in ending up the night doing something like that. We had to really think long and hard about how this would work, and we realised as gay men ourselves that actually telling us not to do that. We started to get this notion that it wasn't about fucking, it was about the social interaction that was going on that led to that. It was about those gay men having control over their lives and feeling self-worth that would enable them to look after themselves and to stay safe and to have healthy relationships, whether they're sexual, emotional, whatever. That was I think the core message that we came upon. We didn't talk about stopping transmission, we talked about being in control of your life and taking charge of your life and making safe choices with your life. That was a very different thing at that point. All of it, all of the publicity, everything was negative. It was all around stop doing what you're doing, invalidating gay men's lives. We validated their life, but asked them to take control of it as well. And the way we did that was to be very visible and very up there around being sex positive, but being approachable. So we'd be in the bars, we'd have outreach, we'd have the leaflets out, but those leaflets would connect. We'd be talking to people in the bars about their lives, in a sense, not going up to them and saying, stop what you're doing. We were going up to them and saying, continue what you're doing, rejoice in what you're doing, but be in control of what you're doing. I forget the number of funerals I went to and the differences in people's lives. You know, that it was staggering to see some people's lives being cast away because their families did not and would not recognise they were gay, and other families who embraced that and had gay friends to the funerals. There was a devastation around, for me, around seeing people's lives just dismissed because of their sexuality, and a joyousness about their lives being embraced because of their sexuality. And it was all about how they were perceived by others. And if your family don't want to know, your life gets ditched. And that for me was a very difficult time. But it was balanced by the joyous times. So, and for me, Healthy Gay Manchester was the way that I could bring something back that made a difference, or I hoped was making a difference.
In the mid-1990s, I was working with BHAF, Black HIV AIDS Forum, and they were developing this work around black gay men's health services and recognising that their issues and their needs weren't really being addressed or met. And their approach was very much about how do you get communities to look at these issues in a way that they'll actually listen. And part of that job was really to get that message out there. We're just going to the first club night outside the village. It was a location. It was partly trying to find something that was close to the village, but not in the village. The gay village at the time was predominantly a safe space for white gay men, but we were trying to find a space which would probably be more appealing, I suppose, if that's the right word, to somebody who wasn't white and gay. So the idea behind finding a space outside the village was important, and we were lucky enough to find this one here. We're coming to it now, actually. This location meant that we could host our first ever Black and Asian night, club night, just to get people to feel confident enough to come out and meet somebody else who felt the same way or enjoyed the same music, and hopefully felt that they were able to meet somebody else, really. And through that, hopefully, we also introduce safe sexual health messages, prevention, in a non-threatening way, really, non-preachy way, maybe to look after yourself, protect yourself, and still be able to go home quietly without somebody finding out about themselves.
When I talk to my friends about what I do, or when I talk to my friends about going for a HIV test, they do get a bit scared around the topic still, and that's something we have to change. Just take a prick from one of your fingers, get a few drops of blood, and that's it. Super quick, super painless, and you've made the biggest step by coming here today. And we've grown up to think that some of us are targeted by HIV, that HIV is a death sentence. But medically, HIV now is a completely manageable virus, so we need to really encourage each other to test. Whether that's going to be a reactive result or a non-reactive result, you're going to be fine. The problem is when you don't test and you don't know if you're HIV positive, if you're HIV negative. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now if it wasn't for the people who came before me, went through what they went through and did what they did. We do still, however, have to work together in ending the stigma that's still attached to HIV.